A little bit. Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Can you just put us, say we're going to?
Yep.
Yeah.
Motion to go into executive session. Say aye.
Aye.
Can we do the pledge? Just
Yeah,
have
if you
that
want
on
to
my-
do the pledge, that's fine.
Thank you. Senator Reardon.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Senator Reardon.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to start with House Bill 54, and I'd like to move interim study.
Second.
Seconded by Senator
Yes.
Gannon. Is there any discussion on the interim study? Senator Altshuler?
Thank you. I already had the red on. So what we heard in testimony was that our ATCs are at the point where should they not move into the nonprofit, out of the nonprofit to the for-profit model, we are endangering having them at all. And that to be able to access the medical care that so many Granite Staters rely on, we really need to allow the ATCs to do their job and provide the products that they do. So an interim study just pushes this off for later, and we can't support that when people need this now.
Thank you, Senator. Is there any further discussion on House Bill 54? Okay, seeing none, the prevailing motion is interim study. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No,
Okay, so this will go on the consent calendar.
no.
Oh, no, excuse me,
Regular
this is
calendar.
not going on the
I like
consent
that.
calendar. Yeah, no. And Senator Abbas, will you take this one out?
I will.
All right, next we're going to go to House Bill 206. I move ITL, seconded by Senator Abbas. Is there any discussion on the ITL motion? 206. No. Senator Altshuler, do you have any comments?
I do not, thank you.
Okay. All right, so the prevailing motion is ITL. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Senator Reardon moves consent, seconded by Senator Abbas. Is there any discussion on the consent calendar motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Senator Reardon, do you want to take this one out? Okay. Next, we're going to go to House Bill 609, which we are going to hold. Next, we are
Seven, I'm sorry. Madam-
Yes, 609, we're going to hold. We're also going to hold House
it's not on the
Bill
list.
767. Okay,
767.
we just need to
Oh,
do
we're
a
holding
little more work.
767?
Yes,
Got it. Okay.
just needs a little more work. House Bill 1040, I move ought to pass, and seconded by Senator Gannon. We do have an amendment, and I would like to present amendment number 1295S. And I'd like to move ought to pass on amendment 1295S.
Second.
Seconded by Senator Abbas. This amendment simply changes the committee members to 3 members of the House of Representatives, and removes the senator from it. Does anybody have any comments, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor on amendment 1295S, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we have a motion of ought to pass as amended on House Bill 1040,
Second.
seconded by Senator Abbas. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Move consent?
Senator Altschiller moves consent calendar. Is there a second? Seconded by Senator Reardon. Is there any discussion on the consent calendar motion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Senator Altschiller, would you like to take this one out?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we're going to move to House Bill 1109, and I'd like to move interim study,
Second.
seconded by Senator Abbas.
It's,
Okay, 1108, I'm sorry. So I'd like to move interim study on 1108, and Senator Abbas has seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of the interim study motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, seeing none,
Move for consent.
Senator Abbas moves consent. Is there any discussion on the consent calendar motion? Oh, seconded. Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay. Senator Reardon, would you like to do this one as well? Okay. Next, we're going to move to House Bill 1156, and I'd like to move interim study,
Second.
seconded by Senator Abbas. Is there any discussion on the interim study motion? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay. Is there a motion? Okay. Senator Reardon moves consent,
Second.
seconded by Senator Abbas. Is there any discussion on the consent calendar motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Okay, Senator Gannon, would you like to take this one out?
Sure.
Okay. Next, we're going to turn to House Bill 1172, and I would like to move ought to pass.
Second.
Seconded by Senator, was it Reardon? Okay. Is there any discussion on the ought to pass motion? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is there a move to, Senator Reardon moves
Second.
consent. Is there a second?
Second.
Senator Abbas. Is there any discussion on the consent motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Senator Abbas, would you like to do this one?
Yes.
Okay. Next, we're going to move to 1175, and I'd like to move ought to pass, seconded by Senator Reardon. Is there any discussion on House Bill 1175? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so is there a consent motion? Senator Reardon moves consent. Is there a second? Second by Senator Gannon. Is there any discussion on the consent calendar motion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay. Senator Altschiller, would you like to take this one out? Sure. Okay. Next, we are going to move to House Bill 1260. I'd like to move ought to pass. Yes. Oh. Okay, yes, I know. I have a note here that there's an amendment, but we have to make the motion on the underlying bill. So I would like to move ought to pass on House Bill 1260.
Second.
Seconded by Senator Abbas. Senator Reardon has an amendment. Would you like to speak to your, well, what is the motion on your amendment?
Ought to pass on amendment 20261173S.
Okay. You may speak to your amendment.
Thank you. This was an amendment that was the subject of a non-germane amendment hearing at the same time that we heard 1206. It provides for confidentiality of only the financial information that's in a divorce decree. in keeping with the case law and current law. Everything else about the divorce is meant to be public, but the financial information of the parties, when it is a uncontested divorce, no minor children are involved, and both parties agree that they would like the records redacted for their personal financial information, which involves the value of their property, what the encumbrances are on their properties, what the ownership shares are, so that people sitting on their couch in Peru can't be looking through the records of a New Hampshire divorce.
Thank you, Senator. I'm looking here, I'm kind of like going through, trying to find the bill number. So is there any discussion on the proposed amendment? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Is there a motion on the bill as amended?
To pass as amended.
It's seconded by Senator Gannon. So is there any discussion on the bill as amended, House Bill 1260? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Move
Okay.
consent.
Senator Reardon moves consent.
Second.
Seconded by Senator Altschuler. Is there any discussion on the bill as amended? For the consent calendar, excuse me. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Senator Reardon, would you like to take this one out?
Yes.
Okay. Oh boy. No, I just got a thing. Governor Ayotte, her security team was his driver. They were at the polls in Bedford and there was a crash. House Bill 1308 and House Bill 1365, we're going to hold these two bills. And we are going to take up House Bill 1366. Senator Abbas moves ought to pass. Is there a second? Seconded by Senator Gannon. Is there any discussion on House Bill 1366 as proposed, ought to pass? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Is there a
Move consent.
move? Okay, we got a motion for consent from Senator Reardon. Is there a second? Seconded by Senator Gannon. Is there any discussion on the consent calendar motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Senator Abbas, would you like to take this one out?
You would.
Yeah.
I'll take it out.
Okay, all right. I saw you make a motion, I thought you were like waving it off. Okay. The next bill we're going to take up is House Bill 1444. I'd like to move ought to pass.
Second.
Seconded by Senator Gannon. Yeah, we're all kind of going, oh, there's bills everywhere. Okay. So the motion on House Bill 1444 is ought to pass. Is there any discussion? Senator Altschuler?
Yeah, I'm wondering if you might tell me where the why you're moving ought to pass. In my notes, I have that we didn't have any co-sponsors come to introduce it, and that I don't know, it just seemed a little esoteric and unclear. Yeah, I'm not clear on the bill itself, why it was necessary.
Okay.
And we're gonna,
So
I'm gonna
Senator,
pass it. Yeah, my notes are
yeah,
in the hearing report, it just doesn't,
it basically bans us buying drones from other countries. So that it must be like an American-made product, it must be approved. So we know that there are other countries, very specifically China, that produces drones, and we do not want that product here. So. Can I answer your question, Senator?
Yeah, but it's not specified China in the bill, right?
No,
No.
it's kind of, because
So-
we know there are other countries that are bad actors as well, that we should not be
Okay.
doing business with, so. But this is specifically forbidding the state to buy them from these other countries, state or local governments on the list, but that is by January 1st, 2028. So it gives people plenty of time. So. Okay. Do you want more time, Senator, to consider this?
Yeah, if we could.
Okay, all right, so we can hold off, and if we have some time on Thursday, we can
Perfect.
revisit this one. So I'm not going to, I will withdraw my ought to pass, so we can hold on to this. It's okay. The next bill we have is House Bill 1522, relative, and I'd like to move ought to pass, seconded by Senator Gannon. We also have amendment number 1292S, and I'd like to move ought to pass as on the amendment. Is there any discussion on the amendment, Senator Altshuler?
Yes, thank you very much. On the amendment, on line 8, I have notations here from the bill hearing that in between that perhaps we should put in line 8, threat to the petitioners, and then add in physical or by use of coercive control, safety. That was a note.
Okay. Okay,
And so I would move we add in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, those 7 words. Yes, on line 8, between the words petitioners and safety, insert physical or by use of coercive control.
I think the or by use of coercive control actually goes after the word safety. Physical goes before the word safety,
Thank you.
or use
Yes.
by force of control.
so what do you,
All right, grammatically, she's absolutely correct.
okay, so let's try this
Here,
again.
So on line 6 of the original bill,
go ahead. 8. Oh, no, of the amendment.
of the amendment,
Sorry,
what's in the amendment?
Yes, if you look at, it's in the definition of coercive control where it includes, let's see. I mean, alternatively, we could bring the coalition up if you wanted to ask, they're here, if you want to ask them questions about it, since it's their language.
Yeah.
They would probably get a better answer.
I'm
than me.
worried that we've taken it out of one of the acts that would
Yeah, the
require
predicate
physical
offenses.
use.
I had that
take
same
in-
concern, and when I reviewed it with the coalition, they
I'm
switched.
willing to talk, if we want to
You want
set
to
this
come up?
aside, we could do
Yeah.
that, or
Yeah, we'll have her come up and we'll talk about this.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm Pamela Keilig, and I'm the Public Policy Specialist at the Coalition. I'm happy to answer any questions.
do you have a copy of?
Hold on.
And Senator, I found it was in the section, the definition of credible present threat. It
I'm
says,
sorry, Kate, say that again.
in the definition of credible present threat on page 2 of the amendment, it says in its analysis, the court may also consider the presence of one or more acts of coercive control as defined in paragraph 2A.
What line are you on?
This is line 14 to 16 on page 2 of the amendment.
14 to 16.
And so the coalition and other stakeholders believe that covers it and is a clearer way of handling it than having it be listed out in the definition of abuse to ensure there are no unintended consequences.
Yeah, so the current list of acts of abuse are all crimes. And so there was concern that by adding coercive control, which isn't a statutory crime, that could open the door for some additional consequences or challenges. Worst case scenario, litigating whether or not someone needed to have a firearm removed or other cases, this removes that potential, like a list of consequences, and keeps it very clean. Our understanding is that the judicial branch wouldn't need to remake any of the forms and would be able to continue this model. But now judges would have this definition to use and apply to these cases and broaden their understanding of abuse so that it includes coercive control. And then I think the reason I think we would want to look into whether we add physical safety is that I think the original intent was not that it includes physical safety, and we wouldn't want to inadvertently narrow the statute for what act. So I think that, I don't know if that answers your question, but I think we're fully supportive of the amendment, but I'm happy to answer any other questions or get any additional information that you might have.
That was helpful. Thank you.
So can we keep her up here for just a moment? No, don't move. Hang on.
Well, it seems that there's some questions about this one, so we can put it off until Thursday.
Okay.
Okay, so we want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to get some questions answered if they need them done. Okay. Okay, next, we're going to take up House Bill 1651. We're not going to take that one up because we're going to hold that one too. Okay, next, we're going to go to House Bill 1696. I would like to move ought to pass.
Second.
Seconded by Senator Abbas. Is there any discussion on the ought to pass on House Bill 1696? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, is there a motion for consent?
Move for consent.
Okay, Senator Reardon moves consent, seconded by Senator Abbas. Is there any discussion on House Bill 1696? Seeing none, excuse me, on the consent calendar motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Senator Gannon, do you want to take this one out?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Next, we have House Bill 1697. I'd like to move ITL, seconded by Senator Gannon. Is there any discussion on the ITL motion? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Move consent.
Senator Reardon moves
Second.
consent, seconded by Senator Altshuler. Is there any discussion on the consent calendar motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Senator Abbas, do you want to take this one out?
Sure.
Okay. And next we'll go to House Bill 1730. And I'd like to move ought to pass.
Second.
Seconded by Senator Abbas. Is there any discussion on House Bill 1730? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Is there a motion for the consent
Move for
calendar?
consent.
And Senator Abbas moves consent, seconded by Senator Reardon. Is there any discussion on House Bill 1730? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay. Senator Reardon,
Um,
do you want to take this one out?
I will, and I apologize on 1696 and 1697. I didn't get who was taking those up.
So, do you want to reconsider your vote?
No.
1697 is
Oh.
Abbas.
My colleague has filled me in. Thank you.
Okay, all
Thank
right.
you.
So that's all that we have for today. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to, come out of executive session. Okay, seconded by Senator Abbas. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We're out of executive session, and I'm turning it back over to Senator Gannon.
Thank you very much. Just wait for the sheet.
Dump it on the floor in a second.
You know who Rep Damon is? Damon? This one's black. Is Rep Damon or Birch in the room? What's that? Representative.
Is there a state representative here that would like to introduce the bill for us as a courtesy?
Yep, we're going for you. Come on down. Do you have a copy of 1100 form? Thank you, Representative, for helping us out.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. And for the record, my name is Daniel Popovich Miller. I represent Windham, Rockingham 17, and I'd like to introduce HB 1100 FN.
Thank you very much, Representative. Does anyone else wish to testify who didn't sign in on 1100 FN? Seeing none, that'll end the hearing. Rep Popovich, would you help me again? I don't think Damon or Birch are in the room, so I appreciate it. So we're doing HB 1240, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As it happens, I had every other bill other than 1100 just in case. So
Thank you.
for the record, again, Daniel Popovich Miller, representing Rockingham 17, and I'm here to introduce HB 1240 FN.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Penny, are you speaking today on this?
Yeah.
Okay. You crossed it out, so I wasn't sure. Come on up. Yes, it is. So you're in good shape. No, I appreciate your asking. You never know. Thank you, Miss Dean. If your red button's on right, I couldn't see it. There
I
we go.
hope it is.
Just introduce
Yeah.
yourself and
Thank you very much. My name is
Thank you.
Penny Dean. I'm an attorney. I live in Concord, New Hampshire, and have since 1995. And I'm admitted in Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, DC Circuit, all of those federal courts, as well as the courts of appeals, United States Supreme Court, and most importantly, the DC Circuit, which is called the Second Supreme Court by many. And I'm raised in opposition to this bill, and I do not know how it got past the House. Someone should have had a roll call vote. I think the road to heck is paved with good intentions. And this is what we have here. We already have too many criminal threatening charges where people will display a firearm and the other person always says, oh, they pointed it, even if they lift it up or even if they turn it. And that's a really big problem in this state. But if we add this, reasonably appeared to a victim to be a deadly weapon, I've got to tell you, I have paintball guns, I have training guns, and they look as real to most people as you can imagine. I even have some battery-operated squirt guns I got to squirt the kitty cat when he's naughty. And I've had those setting on my counter, and more than one gun owner has looked to pick them up and went, wow, this is a squirt gun. It looks very, very, very real. And so you look at when people are having a kerfluffle or an issue, and they're 5, 10, 12 feet apart, and hands are covering part of it, even people who are reasonable could misunderstand a firearm versus a plastic training gun, a red gun, a silver gun, a blue gun, or even a kid's toy gun. So do we want to have children who are in squirt gun fights? Do you want an overzealous police officer to be able to charge them with a felony and destroy their life? Do you want this to go through like that? And you have to ask yourself, if a person has a firearm, there's plenty of tools for the police to charge them with pointing a firearm. We don't need the reasonably appeared to the victim, because what that's doing is it's really giving the police tons of extra power, and it's like charge stacking. Some people are afraid to face that, and they'll plead guilty to something they didn't do. I've had more than one person, and I've refused to take those cases, say, no, I'm not guilty, but I can't afford a trial, and I can't afford to risk my family. If I go to jail, I'm the sole breadwinner. I have to take a plea because I can't take a risk. And that's not what our system is meant to be. And so I really respectfully say this needs to be ITL'd, and if not ITL'd, it needs to be reworked in a major way. I see all sorts of trouble coming down the pike. And I can think most recently of a case I had on Halloween in Manchester. The kid was dressed like a soldier, okay? And they made a big deal about everything. And dressed like a soldier on Halloween is not that unusual, you know, with a bunch of people with kids trick-or-treating. And so you look at this and you say, okay, how many of you walk through Walmart or any store and see guns that, quite frankly, look very real, especially from a distance? So I respectfully ask to ITL it, and it's kind of like a pretty girl or an ugly girl. It's beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and what reasonably appears to be a victim who doesn't like firearms especially. I think you have a problem here.
Senator Abbas has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for taking my question. I see the point that you're making. When it comes to criminal threatening, I mean, if someone's dressed in a costume, you know, wouldn't they have to do some overt act on top of it to pose some type of threat? I mean, the mere act of carrying the weapon, whether it's real or appears to be real, wouldn't you need more than just the act of carrying it or just even displaying it?
In the reality 101, absolutely not. Not with Manchester PD. Nope, not at all. Arrest them, stuff them, cuff them. And and here's the really interesting thing to me. Manchester PD has more body worn and whatever video cameras than I've ever seen before. I reviewed more video evidence and audio evidence in this particular case than I have in many cases. And here's what happened when asked directly by the people, the quote victims. I call them complaining witnesses, not victims. We have trial to determine if they're a victim. These are complaining witnesses. And ask if he pointed at him. Well, he kind of turned towards us. That's good enough. Let's arrest him. Let's destroy his life. So the answer is no, not as a practical matter. And even sometimes in this, if the client ever lets me release these videos, would be a good training video, we hear what I call nod, nod, wink, wink, nudge, nudge by the officers. Well, do you think he pointed it towards you? Instead of asking open-ended questions, well, he might have put that muzzle toward you. If he did that then, nod, nod, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And you have to ask yourself, how many police departments in this state don't have body-worn cameras? So we don't even know that they got the nod, nod, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So the answer is, unfortunately, no, not as a practical matter.
So if I could ask a follow-up, and thank you for taking my question. What happens in a circumstance then if someone has what is a replica of a real firearm? It's not, but they still point it at someone. I think that's what this may have been going for. I understand as worded, it may not land the plane the way you.
I still think that's not the way we want to be in New Hampshire. Do we want to be like FBI, and a bank robber, if I put my finger in here and say, stick them up, right? So I got my finger in my jacket pocket, and you, quote, are scared, so you think it might be a firearm, even though you don't see it. You see my finger, I'm in the jacket pocket. Do you want to charge them that way here? I don't think we do. And the other thing is, when it comes to what's quote unquote a real firearm, I have my firearms, TB applied finishes will powder coat them in what we call penny pink or Revlon number 19. They're this color. I can assure you those suppressors and firearms are as real as they come, but they look pink. So, or they are pink, actually. So I think just because they have something like that, should they be allowed to be charged that way? What if I take my pen and say, you do that again? Well, I could take a pen and poke your eye out, but are we going to charge me that way?
With your finger in the pocket, aren't you putting a reasonable, if you're in a bank, you put the teller in reasonable fear and apprehension that you have a weapon, you're holding it as such. Wouldn't I be justified into thinking you were robbing the bank? Looks like-
To think you're robbing the bank, absolutely. Absolutely. But whether or not you think I have a firearm, you're presuming you haven't seen it. It's the same way here. Do you want to give them all that extra power? We have tons of tools in our tool belt. How many cases have you had brought forward where if it's a real gun, they get to charge them as such? Tell me what cases, what solution are we looking to find here with this? I think you're looking for more trouble. And this body and the other body has asked in many cases, show us the case that we need this legislation, show us the problem. And I respectfully say the same thing here. Let's see the problem. And I don't think there is one.
So you as the good attorney, when they've winked and nodded, you have said you're leading the witness, right?
What's that?
You've said they're leading the witness when they do your.
Oh,
wink
you
nod.
bet they do. Yeah, you bet they do. And it's offensive, quite frankly.
Senator Ridden?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question. I understand what you're saying as I read the first part of this sentence. It looks like a gun. It's not a real gun. We don't want to prosecute somebody for something that looks like a real gun. But the sentence goes on to say, in the violation of the provisions of Roman 1 A, B, C, or D, which is criminal threatening, trying to coerce or terrorize a person, the purpose to coerce or terrorize a person. Isn't the second part of the sentence what we're really talking about? We don't want the kid in the Halloween costume, but we want somebody who's trying to make somebody else think they have a gun along with one of those other acts, what we're trying to get at here.
That may be what you're trying to get at, but you're missing the mark and you're doing it the wrong way. When it comes to charge stacking, and I don't know if you know what charge stacking is. Okay. Oh, that's right, Leslie. Yep.
Even real estate lawyers know what charge.
If you put them under 10 foot of water or 20 foot of water instead of 10 foot of water, they're still going to drown. And so they have enough tools in their tool belt to charge people with all sorts of crimes. They don't need this added to it because I see this working only for gun owners and down the path of kids that the police department doesn't want, because as you know, police departments and prosecutors have absolute prosecutorial discretion, which is why we have federal laws now, or we did in the 40s, 50s, and 60s for civil rights, because local law enforcement wasn't charging federal civil, offenses like that. And so they said, great, we're going to give us a parallel federal law and that can happen. So what I'm trying to tell you is they have plenty of laws here, and what this is going to do is allow law enforcement to pick on kids again. And I see them picking on kids. Like I said, the kid with the squirt gun.
Other questions? Follow-ups? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Dean. J.R. Hole. Come on down, J.R. How you doing? Good to see you again.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Former Representative J.R. Hole, testifying on behalf of myself as well as the New Hampshire Firearms Coalition in opposition to HB 1240. Just for a little bit of background on the bill passed out of the committee in the House on a 7-6 vote, passed the House on a division vote 170-162 During the public testimony, 0 people testified in favor of it online, 162 testified against it online, and 0 were neutral. So it looks like the public is opposed to this bill. As the attorney just mentioned, who testified against it, what we're doing is raising the charge from a current misdemeanor, which is up to a year in jail, it's unspecified, up to a Class B felony for this particular apparent use. Now, I think we can all agree that criminal threatening with an actual tool, baseball bat, could be used as a weapon, could be perceived as a weapon, but it would, if someone was threatening somebody with a baseball bat saying, I'm going to kill you, and they had the means to do it with something as simple as a sports tool, we would all agree that that would be treated like that person had a deadly weapon, and a baseball bat would fall into that category, even though it's not typically seen as a deadly weapon. In that instance, in that and under that use, it would be seen as a deadly weapon. I think we're expanding the statute in a way that is vague. It will allow for additional prosecutions that might not be necessary. And my biggest concern is for the gun owners who might choose to open carry. So there's a videotape of them walking into a store. They're seen clearly having a firearm on their hip. Someone accuses them of saying something wrong, but there's no video evidence of what happened. There's no audio evidence of what happened. And now it's a pretty easy case to make the argument the person was criminally threatening them and they were just open carrying. And then lastly, in closing, one of the people who testified at the House online did a very good job, and I'd just like to read her testimony. Honorable committee members, I urge you to vote inexpedient to legislate on House Bill 1240. The bill's expansion of current criminal threatening laws poses serious concerns for law-abiding gun owners and the constitutional rights of New Hampshire of law-abiding gun owners and constitutional rights in New Hampshire. Key concerns are the broad language regarding apparent use of a deadly weapon creates dangerous legal ambiguity that could criminalize lawful self-defense. New Hampshire's constitutional carry laws already provide adequate protections while maintaining public safety. The legislation could discourage lawful gun owners from exercising their right to defend themselves and their families. The bill provides prosecutors with overly broad discretion that could be misused against law-abiding citizens in New Hampshire, both in public safety and their constitutional rights. HB 1240 tips the balance too far toward restricting the rights of law-abiding gun owners while doing little to address criminal behavior. I would ask for you to preserve New Hampshire's tradition of protecting constitutional rights and vote ITL. So my concern is this is going to be targeted and misused for the gun owners in particular. So I would ask that you would oppose this bill and vote ITL.
Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. Well, for the lawful firearm owners out there who choose to conceal carry or open carry for that matter, I mean, isn't that already a deadly weapon? So isn't that already covered under the law? My understanding of this is that it expands this.
Correct.
To what appears to the victim to be a deadly weapon, which would turn out they're not actually carrying a deadly weapon. So I guess for the lawful gun owners here in New Hampshire, how are they impacted by this? Because it's expanding it to what is not a deadly weapon, but appears to be.
So if you're threatening if you picked up your pistol, pulled it out of the holster, you are now threatening with a deadly weapon. If it's on you, you've never touched it, you've never grabbed it, it's in the holster, I think you could make the argument that the person has not intended to threaten you with a deadly weapon. Although they might have the means, they haven't crossed the line. It's only when they touch it has something changed.
So if it's a starter pistol, and it appears to be, is that?
Well, starter pistol, somebody has a black painted toy. There's a lot of cases where it might not be a real firearm and someone perceives it and then makes the accusation that that person had a deadly weapon. They didn't.
Okay. Senator Reardon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. As I read this bill, I don't think a gun owner who routinely carries his gun is treated any differently at all. I think what this bill says to me is the people with a fake gun who want you to think it's a real gun are now liable to be charged. It's not any of the activity or use, or whether you touched the gun or not. It's whether or not the gun was real.
So then the language needs a lot of work, because just using the word apparently is inadequate to try and describe and address the situation that, right?
What if,
Appeared to be a deadly weapon. What does appeared to be a deadly weapon, right? Or what reasonably appeared to be a deadly weapon. Back to,
appeared to the victim
right.
to be a deadly weapon. So I don't know if you've got a real gun or a fake gun, but the circumstances are the same for me. For you, before, if that was a fake gun, you wouldn't be able to be charged.
Right.
If
Correct.
it was a real gun you were using, you would be able to be charged.
My concern is it's a vague, the way this is drafted right now is vague enough that it's going to allow prosecutors, who are the people who, according to online testimony, were those who are county prosecutors were asking for the bill to be put in. And it has to do with their ability to prosecute certain cases. If someone is truly threatening, their activity is sufficient alone. It's not about necessarily whether they had something that looked like or a facsimile of a weapon. It was their actions, it was their mindset, it was what they said. That's what they should, right? We should be going after behavior as opposed to tools. And this expands relative tools.
You good?
I'm good.
Okay, Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If the goal, or if your opinion is we should be going after behavior, but someone with a replica device that looks exactly like a deadly weapon, and then they use it and threaten someone in that, while using that non-deadly weapon that looks like a deadly weapon, and they're intending for that person to believe it's a deadly weapon, why is it an issue for us to expand this to apply to that circumstance?
So that's already a Class A misdemeanor if prosecuted correctly, right? It's a misdemeanor in the statute. What this what this bill would do is move it up from a misdemeanor into a Class B felony, okay, which will basically allow the prosecutor additional plea bargain room to keep it to fight the case. That's what it's going to be used for. As the attorney who just spoke before me said, it's going to be charge stacking in such a way that the county prosecutors have a little bit more leverage when it comes to prosecuting certain cases.
Good. Thank you, JR. Have a good day. Does anyone else wish to testify on 1240 who didn't sign in or would like to speak? Seeing none, we'll end the hearing on 1240. Thank you. Representative Ammon, I saw you earlier. Is he out in the hall? How's the ankle doing? Okay, 1423, bring us up to speed, Representative.
All right, great. For the record, my name is Keith Ammon. I represent Hillsborough District 42, and I live in New Boston. So this bill is an amendment to existing statute. I have written testimony that I'll submit, but I'll just tell you the thinking behind this bill. It originated with an experience I had in 2021 that I kind of put it out of my mind until we saw political violence over the summer last year. And so what happened is someone online didn't like a bill that I put in. And what they proceeded to do was send me Facebook messages that were so violent and so graphic. And I called Protective Services. I got in touch with my police department. The person was arrested. In those messages, I won't go into detail, but it involved mutilating genitals, cutting them off, making people eat them. And the thing that bothered me the most was there was sexual violence threatened against my wife. And so I looked at the current statute during the filing period. I was thinking, political violence is becoming more of an issue. And what happened to this person, that the judge gave him a fine of $1,240, but that was waived. So not really. He couldn't talk to me, I didn't know him in the first place. He couldn't talk to me for 1 year, and he had to write me an apology letter. So and to my mind, that was a pretty minimal sentence. So the two things that this bill does is it puts in, this is existing statute 643, talks about improper influence. So existing language is in plain text. So the existing language says threatens any harm to a public servant, party official, or voter. What this bill would do is add or immediate family member of a public servant, party official, or voter, and there's a definition of what a family member would be. And then the existing text continues with the purpose of influence his action, decision, opinion, recommendation, nomination, vote, or other exercise of discretion. So that's the first thing that the bill does, is it allows for your immediate family member to be considered in the charges. And in my case, that wasn't allowed. It wasn't in the statute, in our case. The second thing it does is it puts in a minimum, and it isn't fines waived and an apology letter. So the minimum would be, it's $1,000 for each separately charged public servant, party official, voter, or immediate family member who's threatened. And then there's a 1 year sentence. So, this would have to be something severe for the statute to apply. And, the judge would have to adjudicate it. But it also allows for stacking of the charges. So let's say someone threatened you, or just a voter, threatened them, their spouse, their children, right, their whole household. This would allow for separate charges for those threats. So that's what the bill does, and it passed the House as written. It passed out of the Criminal Justice Committee 174 to 158, and I think we need to establish some minimums, because the judiciary, I think, has too much discretion in this case, and that's based on personal experience. So I urge the Judiciary Committee to pass this bill, and happy to take any questions.
I have a couple of questions. Start. So you meant in line 4 where it says threatens any harm, but then a minute ago you just said it would have to be severe harm. So any harm, severe harm is a big difference.
Well, it'd be up to the judge or jury to decide.
Okay, so he has discretion there to decide, right, the levels of severity.
Whatever discretion they find in the language, that's current language, right?
I'm someone who likes mandatory minimums, so you haven't lost me yet.
Yeah.
What about, you don't have any discretion, so I commend you for getting that through the House. But I know I'm going to have a hard kickback on people saying without judge's discretion. They'll say mandatories don't work. What did you run to in the House on that, in the floor? Was it a close vote? Was it a?
It was 174 to 158, and I don't think it broke down on party lines.
Okay.
There was some crossover.
Okay, I understand you, Bill. Other questions? Send her in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for testifying, and I really am sorry that happened to you and your family for the $100 a year job here. I'm wondering about on line 13.
Yeah.
Harm means any disadvantage or injury. And I'm thinking about your personal situation that you talked about and whether a judge would consider that covered under disadvantage or injury, and maybe we need to be a little bit more explicit that it can be emotional injury, it doesn't have to be.
I mean, in this case, it was explicit ranting about
Yep.
lots of
Yep.
very explicit things, and it wasn't like ambiguous. It was this needs to happen to you and your spouse, and your father needs to watch and all that kind of stuff. Like it was wasn't just like a nuanced thing. In my particular case, and I see the law needs to be written so it applies to every case.
To the hypotheticals
To
that
the
we can't think of,
Yeah.
that somebody might come up with, so.
So that's all existing statute,
That
what
is
you're
now.
referring, and all this bill would do is add the immediate family member to that list
Okay.
in the statute.
Thank you.
I have a quick question, just a lot of us get threatened or have been.
Yeah.
So if they do it, and they're smart about it, and they say, I hope that this happens to you, that wouldn't rise to a level, right? They're like, I hope you lose your other leg because you're such an evil, terrible.
I believe that would probably be interpreted that way, but it would be up to the courts, right? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Again, we're sorry for what happened to you,
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's part of the job, right?
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay, seeing no other questions, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
testimony and for bringing the bill. Where's my little list gone? Does anyone else wish to testify? Seeing none, that'll end the hearing. Okay, we'll take up House Bill 1051. I don't think Rep. Leon's here. Or is she?
We got someone.
But Representative, you're doing such a good job. I think you can go 3 for 3.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. For the record, Representative Daniel Popovich Miller, I'm here to introduce House HB 10551 about the procedure requirements for school bus driver criminal history record checks. And honestly, the one thing I can say about this bill is that I don't really remember any significant disagreement in the House about it. It seemed to be a very straightforward, common sense approach to, taking care of the, ensuring that our school bus drivers have the proper checks done.
Would you have any problem if we took out the one member of the Senate? That was more, I'm fine. You don't have to answer that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, we're good. Wendy Librand. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Wendy Librand. I'm the current president of the New Hampshire Speech Language Hearing Association. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of this bill. This is a critical piece of legislation that will streamline fingerprinting and safety for students, for related service providers, and other contracted professionals to the schools in New Hampshire. The current system is rather outdated in that for each district you work in as a contracted service provider or any other person who's traveling between districts, you must be fingerprinted by that district. And For example, I work for Boothby Therapy Services, and one of our employees has been fingerprinted in New Hampshire over 70 times. This creates delays for student services that are mandated by IEPs because you're waiting on the fingerprints to be returned before the provider can provide needed services that are implemented in the IEP. So there's a long, often a very long waiting period for students. For example, a student who needs an AAC device, like think Stephen Hawking, but the student is young and sitting there without a way to communicate, they could be waiting 4 to 8 weeks before an evaluation could occur by a specialist that districts in New Hampshire often contract with because, for example, in a small district, you may only have one student that needs that service. So therefore it's a specialized service. So you would contract for that, but then you'd be waiting on the fingerprints. By adopting or by adding contracted service providers of all disciplines to the current system that is used for bus drivers in New Hampshire, you would ensure better student safety because it'd be a statewide check, as well as a more swift response to provide those services that students need. And it would reduce the time and money spent. 70 fingerprints is a lot. So I do have some written testimony that I forgot it, sorry. I was supposed to hand it to him. I didn't read it. It's a summary of what I've said.
Thank you for not reading.
I do appreciate your support of this, though. I know that it passed in the House on the consent calendar. And my counterpart, Chris Dunstan, who's the current president of the New Hampshire OT Association, couldn't be here. He sent me some remarks to read if you'd like, or we can have him submit those.
We'll submit them. Senator Abbas has a question for you.
Oh, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. It says it on line 5 of the bill on page 1, also on line 10. On page 1, it mentions contracted service provider, but also says a designated volunteer. Would that include like parents going on a field trip or?
I am uncertain about that. Steve Appleby might be better suited to answer that. I know he was planning to be here today. I don't know.
He just waved.
I'm sorry. I don't know if that includes
we'll
a parent
get him when
volunteer.
Other questions? We're good then. Thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you. I
Appreciate it.
appreciate your consideration.
Steve Appleby. You can start right off with Senator Abbas's question. That'll be a good start.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. Thank you, Steve Appleby, Director, Department of Education. Thank you for the question, Senator Abbas. Designated volunteers are individuals who are deemed to be at a higher level than a straight volunteer. So a parent going on a field trip is not typically a designated volunteer, but an individual, perhaps a coach who's alone with children, would be a designated volunteer. So that's kind of the difference there. So a room parent, like I've been a room parent, that's not a designated volunteer because you're not alone with the child or children.
Thank you.
Do you wish to give further testimony or?
So this bill addresses, it was brought to your House counterpart committee to address this issue of multiple checks in multiple districts. Very similar situation that we had about 5-6 years ago with bus drivers, where they had to get checked in multiple districts, and if they weren't checked, they couldn't drive there and they couldn't cover sick outs. So I worked with the House committee to come up with some language that would kind of take care of that problem, provide a statewide check as well as FBI check. So we run both and issue a statewide clearance so that individual wouldn't have to have, as the example, 70 checks in 10 years. So.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Seeing none, we're great. Thank you. Have a good day. Tracy Adams. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today and speak on behalf of supporting this bill. My name is Tracy Adams. I am the licensed physical therapist in New Hampshire and have been for 14 years. And I'm currently serving as the president of the New Hampshire chapter of the American Physical Therapy Association. So I'm here to represent the interests of our members and to support this bill. You've already heard testimony that adding us in as physical therapists under the provision of being, where I'm at, contracted service providers, that will allow us to go through this system more quickly so that we will be able to then treat the students and that are needing medically necessary care without having to have the prolonged delays that were mentioned before. So we are in support of what's going to happen through this bill. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I provided written testimony that you can review later.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Seeing no questions, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Does anyone else wish to testify on 1051? Seeing no others, that'll end the hearing. Oh, okay, that's why everyone's here. Uh, Rep. Dumont, are you here? Come on down. Tell me all about 1598. I think you brought the room with you, so you filled the house.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. For the record, my name is Dylan Dumont, representative from Hudson Hillsborough, District 13. As the prime sponsor, I rise in strong support of House Bill 1598. In New Hampshire, we value both private property rights as well as personal responsibility. Property owners invest their hard-earned savings, take on financial risk, and provide essential housing to thousands of Granite State families. At the same time, tenants deserve clear rules, timely communication, and respect throughout any dispute. Unfortunately, our current eviction process can sometimes take far too long when the issue is straightforward: non-payment of rent or a serious material breach of the lease that affects health, safety, or involves criminal activity. These delays create real hardship. Unpaid rent piles up, making it harder for good tenants to find new homes, while responsible housing providers struggle to cover mortgages, taxes, maintenance, and utilities. This bill is a result of thoughtful collaboration and hard work between the House Housing Subcommittee, the housing providers, and the New Hampshire legal assistants. Through constructive dialogue, we refined the original proposal and adopted an amendment which improves and streamlines RSA 540 by providing greater clarity and predictability. HB 1598, as amended, improves issues in the clearest cases, non-payment of rent, or significant lease violations in general that genuinely threaten health, safety, or involve criminal conduct. This is not about rushing people out of their homes. It's about restoring efficiency and fairness to a system that moves too slowly for everyone involved. By improving and restructuring notice provisions and streamlining proceedings under RSA 540, we help housing providers recover what is rightfully owed so they can continue providing quality housing, reduce the financial burden on small-scale housing providers and mom-and-pop property owners, encourage timely payment of rent, which ultimately keeps more rental units affordable and available for working families across New Hampshire, all while maintaining strong protections for tenants in other scenarios. This bill reflects core New Hampshire values: personal responsibility, respect for private property, and common sense solutions that work for both sides of the rental equation. This bill passed with bipartisan support in both the Housing Committee as well as on consent on the House floor. For those reasons, I respectfully urge the committee to support and pass 1598. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Questions? I'm just giving them a second. You all set, Sundarelis? We're all good? Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you very much for your time.
Nick Norman.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you again. For the record, my name is Nick Norman. I'm an advocate for housing providers working with landlord associations across the state. And I would say the landlord associations and New Hampshire legal assistants work for countless hours, again, on this bill, coming to this compromise, which took care of many issues in the original bill as it was drafted. There were some unconstitutional provisions in there and some things that just actually squarely took away too many tenant rights. Through this long collaboration, we came to an agreement that was accepted and passed through the House, just like Representative Dylan Dumont said, complete bipartisan support on consent calendar. I'm going to just review a few highlights in the bill. I'd be happy to take any questions. I sent to the committee a very in-depth email in the past day that explains all the provisions of this bill. And before I forget it, I want to mention one drafting error. So if you would look at page 4, line, I'm sorry, is it right? Page 5, excuse me. Line 7. In the second sentence, it says RSA 540-A:4, Roman 7, C, subparagraph C, subparagraph 4. That subparagraph C should be subparagraph E. I've written up it's a one character amendment. I've written that up so you can have it and make sure that gets changed. And that was an oversight when OLS put it together. That if it's left the way it is, it would take away a tenant right. It's just simply a drafting error. What happened is the original, a new paragraph was inserted at B and a new paragraph was inserted at C. So original B became D, original C became E. That's why this needs to change to E. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that so that fix can get changed while we're in the Senate process. So I told you about that. The original bill actually took away a lot of the key eviction timelines and shortened them up. In this amended version, we put them all back to the same as the present law. And basically, this amendment focuses on eliminating what some people might call loopholes or abilities for tenants to exploit the system and delay evictions. It requires tenants to state their defenses and counterclaims, and there's several provisions where both parties would have to state their defenses and counterclaims before a hearing so that the other side can properly prepare. There is an allowance for a short continuance in case the tenant does not state their defenses before hearing. Many provisions protecting from tenants exploiting the eviction law, causing unnecessary delays with frivolous motions. It has in here that if there is a motion, it has to be for good cause. After the notice of judgment and everyone's had their day in court, if the tenant still requests for another motion, then they would need to start paying rent into the court. It reduces discretionary stays, but does provide a provision for extreme cases to allow for additional days on a discretionary stay under that lessened time frame. It also adds to 540A actions that members of a tenant's household, guests, or other occupants that are violating a prohibited act can be brought into the 540A action. And it increases the scope of the 540A action for those tenants. There's one piece that New Hampshire legal assistants will probably talk to you about. We just discussed it out in the hallway. It was just noticed there may be one place where there is a duplication that was not intended that could cause some confusion, so we'll work with some language to correct that. Let me see if I've covered everything.
And Travis has a question. If we can throw it in.
I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. It says on page 1, lines 5 to 8, sets out a time period to file an answer. So, which, and normally when you file that response of pleading, you're going to list all of your affirmative defenses. But then on page 2, lines 14 to 16, and you touched on this in your testimony, that if they, whatever reason, the tenant did not raise that affirmative defense and then raises it at the hearing on the merits, which is the trial, so the discovery is now over, they're either going to continue the case for 7 days, or you can proceed with the trial, as scheduled, but the discovery is already done. Now, normally those defenses, if they're not raised in the response of pleading, they're considered waived. So I guess, is that part of the compromise that you talked about? Because I'm just saying it myself, I would not raise any affirmative defenses in the answer. I'll just wait to the day of the trial. I feel like that would be a good tactic to use. Why tip my hand on what defenses I'm going to use until the day of the actual trial? So I see that as being something that is trying to address the good faith, of a tenant who's doesn't have a legal background. And if they hire a lawyer, the lawyer's just going to sit on it and raise it, and discovery's already done. So it feels like from a landlord perspective, that's stacking the deck against the landlord. That's just how I look at it. And it can be misused by, I figured that out relatively shortly from just reviewing the bill. So I'm just wondering if we were to take that lines 14 to 16 out of this bill, would that destroy the compromise that everyone works on?
Yeah, it would. It would. So there's many provisions in this, lots of pieces, right? Each one's important. So what's important here is that under present law, the tenant does not have to state any defenses or counterclaims when they answer their landlord-tenant writ. And then what happens is a landlord has to prepare for any possible eventuality that might show up at hearing. And what I tell people is it's like we have to come up with wheelbarrows of documents for preparing for any possible thing that could happen. It creates a tremendous amount of time wasted preparing for a case in which often what we prepare for never shows up. So this is an important piece. And in case the tenant doesn't follow the law, that provision for a continuance at the landlord's request could be made so that they could come back and properly prepare for the case.
Thank you.
That's why it was all there.
Cindy Reardon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Norman, if I could ask you back on page 5, where you said a citation in line 7 needed to be corrected.
Yes.
Could you repeat that?
Yes. So we're on page 5.
Line 7.
Yep. Line 7. It should read, next sentence halfway through, notwithstanding RSA 540-A:4, Roman 7, subparagraph E, E like elephant.
There is not a subparagraph E in that section.
There is when this passes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Paragraph E.
Seeing none. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Lauren Warner. Sorry, I skipped over you.
Good afternoon, honorable members of the committee. My name is Lauren Warner, and I serve as Deputy General Counsel for the Judicial Branch. I have written testimony which I'll submit to you all, and I won't go over that now. Just wanted to note the Judicial Branch doesn't take a position on the bill. Happy to answer any questions in regards to the fiscal note that was included, and would just like to note with any expedited cases or cases which include statutory timeframes, the impact on other case types that do not have statute-driven timeframes is as a result of those cases are delayed. So for example, you're talking divorce and parenting cases. When expedited cases come in, those are having, the ones without timeframes are the ones that have to be pushed back. So anytime one comes before which moves up a time frame, that is the result, unless there is additional judges or additional staff that are then employed by the judicial branch to offset that. And I would just also note, based on my read of the bill as amended, it's noting days as opposed to business days. Currently in the law, we have a number of instances which are business days. So if you're changing that to 7 days versus 7 business days, that's even shortening the time frame. But happy to answer any questions the committee might have.
Senator Reardon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm not sure you'll know the answer to this, but as Senator Abbas was asking this question, I thought of it. In landlord-tenant cases, how often are those pro se? How often is it the tenant that's trying to navigate this?
I don't know that off the top of my head, and unfortunately in our case management system, we wouldn't be able to determine that. I could tell you, I think it was 2024, we had 5,736 landlord-tenant cases. The majority of those were eviction cases. I would highly suspect a number of those are pro se. Also, given the fact, if you notice, there's a 7-day notice period or response to then answer, the likelihood of someone who is unable to pay rent affording counsel in that shortened time frame certainly leads to more pro se cases.
Very good. Seeing no other questions, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. David Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is David Klein. I'm a small landlord with my units on the seacoast. I'm supporting this bill, and I had a little bit of a hand in the initial draft of the amendment. A couple of things to point out at the beginning. The fiscal note that attached is from the original bill. It is not this bill. The expedited eviction process is what we got rid of, that Mr. Norman was talking about, that there were constitutional issues that we recognized. And as part of the landlord group, we agreed with the tenants group that they had to go. Second to the senator's question regarding the affirmative defenses, what was said to us, and we agreed that many of the tenants will appear pro se and wouldn't know that they had to file an answer with affirmative defenses. So that's why we said that we're not making it a bar as it would be in a Superior Court case where you do have to plead them with the original answer or they're barred. So that it gives the tenants the rights to still make those affirmative defenses, especially with the short time frame, so that they can make it. But then it gives the landlord a chance to back off 7 days and prepare for those affirmative defenses. I have had a couple of evictions on my own where the tenants come out of the blue with the defense and we had no idea what they were coming with. You know, you can't come with all of your paperwork. It's just impossible, especially if it's a long-term tenant. The bill does amend RSA 540, basically the eviction statute, and 540A, I'll call it the landlord-tenant do's and don'ts statutes. I'm just going to address one part of this on the 540A and why I asked for it when we were doing the drafting. A number of years ago, another landlord told me of a story that he has a 30-unit building, and one of the tenants was a hoarder. This wasn't a hoarder that just filled the apartment with furniture and other things. He didn't take out his trash and garbage also, resulting in a very serious health problem. There's nothing in 548 today that would give a landlord a right to get this tenant right out. Even the health department couldn't get this guy to start cleaning it up. And the only way to do it was to get him out and then bring it in. How the other landlord got him out, I'll be honest with you, I don't know. But if you read through 548 very carefully, there is no right of the landlord to get this immediate relief, to get somebody who's that problematic out. during the drafting process, New Hampshire Legal Aid brought up they wanted it only for the person who's causing the problem. And that language is very definitely in this statute where it should only be issued, and page 4, line 4 and 5, only the person found by the judge to have violated that particular section, where it's health and welfare of people or damage to the property. So it was very narrowly cut on purpose, or drafted on purpose for it. So what I'm asking is, this gives us a tool in the extraordinary situation to get someone out. It's not meant to bypass the eviction process at all. It's not a self-help. It has to be ruled on by a judge before anything can be done. And it's beneficial not only to the landlord, but also all of the other tenants in the building. Because if you think about it, most apartment buildings are multifamily. There aren't that many one-unit rentals. I'm free to answer any questions or open to answer any questions.
Nope, I think we're good.
Thank
Thank
you
you very
very
much for your testimony. Jessica Margison. Good afternoon, ma'am. How are you? Good.
Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Jessica Margison. I'm a resident of Manchester, New Hampshire. I run a tenant clinic in Manchester, New Hampshire for the past 4.5 years, helping multiple tenants learn how to be pro se tenants and get themselves ready for court or make agreements with their landlords. The other part of that is I also run New Hampshire Tenants Union, where a lot of tenants are coming together because they feel the increasing pressure with the loss of their rights, the increase in rent and lack of any affordable housing out there. I think we can all agree that the eviction process is not perfect as it is now, but that a lot of effort has gone into making sure it is fair and just. What this bill would do would be to go backwards on anything fair and just. I can tell you that the legal assistance that many of these tenants are applying for is so overburdened with the amount of evictions and the need out there that it takes time to even process their intake to get them assistance or even some type of education before they have to appear in court. That can easily take a couple weeks. All the processes they have to go through when they go to city welfare, that's probably the quickest place to get into it is a walk-in. But when they have to go to any other assistance, those places take a lot of time to process, so we just don't have it out there. We have a lack of, besides the lack of affordable housing, we have a lack of money for assistance, for any type of rental assistance to get people into new places. So I want to oppose this bill based on the length of time a tenant needs to apply for legal aid and any assistance, especially since we don't have any type of, we hear this mentioned a lot, there's no safety net for those who are elderly or disabled. For me, I have to create a multiple layered net myself for them. With every department I can think of, it's a multi-systemic approach and trying to find a social worker to get involved because there is none. I also wanted to point out the judicial branch estimates that the additional administrative and case processing responsibilities will range between $100,000 and $500,000 per year when initiated. Why are we investing in making more people homeless at a time we need to invest in getting them back in their homes? Thank you.
Thank you very much. No questions. Does anyone else wish to testify on 1598? Come on up.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, again, for the record, Dylan Dumont, Hillsborough 13, just a couple things I wanted to touch base on.
Sure.
The amendment Mr. Norman spoke to, I did send it over to Senator Carson, as she's a co-sponsor on this, so she does have a copy, and I'll make sure to forward that along to you as well. And then just to speak on the fiscal note, the original bill did have a separate expedited process, which when this was amended, that was completely eliminated, along with the fiscal note, and because of that, House Finance actually waived that off. And I just want to point out that I do appreciate Senator Abbas's comments concerning the language on page 2 and would agree, but it was part of the compromise. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. We had one more to testify, I believe. Padre. Good afternoon, sir. Just say your name and for the record.
Years ago, I retired from the time I represented the council, I appeared in more eviction actions than certainly than the vast majority of lawyers. There's just a couple of things I want to know. Number one, regarding Senator Reardon's question, I can say unequivocally that the overwhelming number of tenants who are in eviction proceedings have no legal challenge. And as has been pointed out, the time they need to figure out if they have to proceed, it's not going to happen in the vast majority of cases. And therefore, instead of having the essential compromise is that if they didn't know enough that they had a defense within the 5 days of the return day, that they would still have a chance to raise it once they found out about it, but giving the landlord more time to deal with that affirmative defense or counterclaim if the landlord wants to. So am I being clearer about this? So I think that's really important. The other one really gets into the weeds, but I think it is important, and it's something that we just discovered, and I apologize for that, and I have spoken to Nick about it. If you go to page 3, Roman numeral, towards the bottom, starting at lines 23 and going to line 30. You have in Roman numerals 2, paragraph 2 and 3, you have grounds for which the tenant can be immediately removed from the property without any hearing whatsoever. And yet when you see on line 24, one of the reasons for that is because the tenant is preventing the completion of necessary repairs. But if you look at paragraph 3, it says the tenant is willfully preventing the landlord from making emergency repairs. This distinction is important because there are a lot of conditions which are necessary to fix, say, a hole in the drywall, a drop ceiling where where one panel has fallen out, that don't warrant kicking somebody out without any hearing whatsoever. So I think and it causes confusion for the judge. Is he using a necessary repair standard or a standard that says emergency repairs? And I don't think that the landlords will object to this. And again, I'm sorry that I didn't catch it until an hour before the hearing. But this conflict between necessary and emergency raises serious problems. And I would point out that for necessary repairs, the current law, RSA 548, section 3, paragraph 5, in which a tenant would have an opportunity for a hearing that says no tenant shall willfully refuse the landlord access to the premises to make necessary repairs. So that the necessary repairs is already covered under the current law and shouldn't be part of the process where the tenant can be kicked out prior to any hearing whatsoever. So I would suggest that in line 24, we delete the phrase prevent completion of necessary repairs and leave it to the making emergency repair standard in line 30. And I'm sorry for getting into the weeds like this, but it is a significant, if small, change. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Nope, seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to testify on 1598? Seeing none, that will end the hearing. You're getting quite comfortable there.
Not a bad seat.
Not bad. Okay, introduce me to 1499, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Judiciary Committee. Again, for the record, I'm Representative Dylan Dumont from Hudson Hillsborough, District 13. I'm here to introduce and rise in support of House Bill 1499. In New Hampshire, tenants in the vast majority of residential properties may only be evicted for specific reasons listed in RSA 542, Roman numeral 2. Those reasons currently include non-payment of rent, damage to the property, lease violations, behavior affecting health or safety, and other good cause. If we were to read the decisions from New Hampshire Supreme Court, we would learn other good cause is ambiguous on its face. The New Hampshire Supreme Court has been asked to interpret it more than a dozen times in the past 25 years. This bill makes a few things unambiguously clear and adds targeted grounds for termination of tenancy under RSA 542 Roman numeral 2 when a tenant or occupant lies about who they are, either through fraud or identity theft, recently convicted of felony, recently convicted of violating immigration laws, or if you're a registered sex offender, including an offender against children. Importantly, this bill includes strong safeguards, which would be a conviction disclosed in writing to the landlord before the tenancy begins cannot be used as a grounds for eviction. This bill respects second chances for those who are honest upfront while protecting responsible landlords, honest tenants, families, and communities from hidden risks while promoting accountability and clarity in our housing laws. And for those reasons, I respectfully urge the committee to support House Bill 1499. I just want to let you know that I stepped in for Representative Alexander, who couldn't be here today, so I will not be taking any questions.
Thank you very much. We're all set.
Thank you.
Stephen Tower. Afternoon.
Good afternoon. Steve Tower, New Hampshire Legal Assistance. I'm here to testify in opposition of this bill. As you heard earlier in this committee session, we did a lot of work this session to try to reach compromises where we were able to approach certain bills as neutral with the housing providers. And this is unfortunately a bill that we were not able to find a position that we could be neutral on. So we are opposing this bill. The intent of this bill is seemingly to allow landlords to address situations where they believe a past criminal record makes the individual a threat to either the landlord or other tenants, that they are a safety threat. But under the existing landlord-tenant law, there is a provision that a tenant can be evicted if they are engaging in activity that poses a threat to health or safety to either the other tenants or the landlord. That is already in the law. So this would allow someone to be evicted for a past criminal status, even if their behavior and conduct while living in the residence is not a threat. There's a part of this bill allows for the eviction for any individual who uses personal identification that does not belong to them in order to obtain housing. That's already allowed as a grounds for eviction under existing law. Inducing housing through fraud, it would be grounds to evict under other good cause. I have seen those eviction cases. And So that section, I believe, is already covered by the law. There is not a need to include additional language to that effect in RSA 540. As to the specific past the specific past criminal offenses that allow for a landlord to proceed with eviction upon discovering the past offense. One of them includes any crime in a state, federal, or tribal court that has a maximum penalty of at least 1 year. And for instance, shoplifting of $1,000 is a felony, and so that is punishable by more than a year in prison. There are other states other than New Hampshire where possession of marijuana is still punishable by a year in prison. And so we have some concerns about the breadth of the crimes that could allow for an individual to be evicted. One of the other issues that we have with this bill is it allows for the entire household to be evicted if the landlord chooses because of the past criminal record of one of the individuals in that household. An eviction brought under this bill, the landlord may name the defendant as the individual and proceed to evict them and essentially bifurcate the lease, but it is not required, so that a landlord may choose to evict the entire household because, say, a 17-year-old or a 19-year-old shoplifted, an iPad or something like that, and that would be possibly a felony depending on the value of the iPad. And the other concern that we have, and I think this hopefully is not particularly a controversial suggestion for a change, is one moment, where did that go? Yes. So the requirement is that an eviction can be proceeded on where a past criminal record is not affirmatively disclosed in writing to the landlord. We would suggest that a past criminal record may be disclosed in writing or through the submission to a criminal background check. What would be concerning to me is if a tenant is able to apply for an apartment, submit to a criminal background check, their past criminal record is provided to the landlord, and the landlord rents to them, but at some point down the line, because they did not affirmatively in writing write out the specific offenses that were disclosed through the criminal background check, that could be grounds for eviction. I think that's a small change that under paragraph 540:2, Roman numeral 2, 2D2, allowing for the inclusion of disclosure in writing by the tenant or occupant or through criminal record disclosure or criminal record submission to the landlord would be a major improvement to that section there. And with that, those are the major concerns that I have about this bill, and I'm happy to take questions. I do not, one moment, I do not have a copy of the official. That would be under page 1, line 21 is a suggestion where I would suggest adding a criminal record disclosed in writing by the tenant or occupant or through the submission to a criminal background check.
Thank you for taking my question. I know you point out several parts of this you had raised issues with, but from lines 10 to 20, is this really, it lists 4 categories or 4 examples where you can actually have additional grounds for evictions. Are you opposed to all 4 of those? Or are some of these acceptable, some of them not? Can you just distinguish that for me? I apologize, I walked in the middle of your testimony.
Yeah,
so
I understand. So My concern is that, a landlord can already screen for any of these past convictions. A landlord is not required to rent to someone who is a registered sex offender. They can ask for that information on an application. They can obtain that information through a criminal background check. And I am uncomfortable with the idea that if a landlord chooses not to ask those questions, they can later down the line use that as a grounds to evict. I would prefer that if a landlord does not want those sorts of persons in their apartment, they should be screening for that when they're seeking tenants, which they are allowed to do that.
Well, and you alluded that if someone, let's say, when the tenancy begins, they're not required to be categorized as a sex offender, but something were to happen in between. Let's say the act already happened, they're on trial, they begin the tenancy, now the tenancy begins, then they're convicted, and they have to now register.
Well, a landlord is also able to ask for arrest history. Have you been arrested for crimes? And that sort of information in their background checks and their application processes.
But the point I'm making is if someone now has to register as a sex offender, and that's public information, there's apps for that, I can just imagine a lot of people that are looking to rent other units in that area, they now see that there's a registered sex offender there that wasn't there when you began the tenancy with that tenant. That may change their opinion on whether they want to continue to rent to that person. Because I don't know who would want to rent a place, especially if they have kids or whatnot.
Yeah, I understand that concern. However, if a landlord is renting to someone and signing a lease with someone based on the information that is true and accurate at the time of that rental, if conduct has occurred during the course of the rental tenancy, during the course of the 1-year lease or whatever it may be, if the landlord believes that that person's conduct poses a threat to health or safety to the community because they engaged in a sex crime or something like that, that is already a basis for eviction under the existing eviction laws, that their conduct poses a threat to health or safety.
Wouldn't you have circumstances where, sometimes there's an investigation, they haven't even found a suspect yet, but then they find that person become the person of interest, and then they charged. All that can happen after the tenancy begins. So they may not have done any act, or bad acts once they signed the lease, but all the information that the landlord would have been able to get came out after it began. So they're not committing any subsequent bad act, shall we say.
That is certainly a possible series of circumstances that could occur. I do not believe that is going to be a common circumstance in there, that the broad breadth of the 4 terms that are allowed for eviction here would affect far more people than the very limited circumstance of someone who has committed a sex crime, has not been arrested or charged, and committed the offense long before they moved into an apartment, and then that charge is discovered and they are prosecuted and convicted of an offense during the course of the tenancy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question. There's nothing to prevent the landlord from putting something in his lease that if you were subsequently convicted, it would be grounds for eviction.
That would be perfectly legal to be put in the lease.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tong.
Thank you very much.
Holly Stevens. Afternoon, Ms. Stevens.
Good afternoon, Chairman Gannon and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Holly Stevens. I'm the Director of Public Policy at NAMI, New Hampshire, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We are here today in opposition to House Bill 1499. As a critical social determinant of health, stable housing is crucial in recovery of folks with mental illness. Housing instability can contribute to stress, anxiety, and other mental health symptoms. And at the same time, symptoms of a mental illness can contribute to folks finding housing. It can be very challenging for them, especially given the discrimination that's already existing out there in reference to folks with mental illness. When this basic need is not met, people may cycle in and out of homelessness, jails, and hospitals. In New Hampshire, appropriate housing for individuals with a serious mental illness and their families is an even greater challenge, with the lack of affordable and supportive housing often leading to negative outcomes. This challenge is only exacerbated by the backdoor issue that I think you've heard about. With the ED boarding crisis at New Hampshire Hospital, there are on any given day upwards of 100, if not more, people stable for more than 15 days waiting to leave New Hampshire Hospital with no place to go. At a time when access to housing is a challenge for all, especially those living with a mental health condition and their families, House Bill 1499 only serves to create a greater challenge for Granite Staters. Under current law, as you've heard, property owners already have a lot of rights and ways that they can evict somebody if their conduct after the tenancy it rises to the level of risking health and safety. But House Bill 1499 would allow property owners to terminate a tenancy for past events, including those up to 5 years in the past, which is a pretty excessive time frame. This policy essentially enables a property owner to sidestep other legal standards to evict tenants for any reason, so long as they meet the conditions laid out in the bill. Meaning, if a tenant complains about an issue of disrepair in the apartment, a landlord can investigate the background of the individual who's complaining. And if they find a felony from 4.5 years ago, they can evict that person. Although this provision, and you've heard about the other provision in the law, the bill allows for a complete termination of tenancy, even if only a sole occupant has committed a felony in the past. Although this provision is not mandatory, it is within the discretion of the landlord and the court to terminate the tenancy for all living there for the past criminal conviction of one individual. For instance, an entire family can be evicted if an adult child, say a 19-year-old, has been convicted of possession of a controlled substance. This change undermines legal protections for the tenants throughout New Hampshire and will likely have an outsized impact on people with mental illness, with prior justice involvement, and who have substance use disorders, as well as all of their families. And for these reasons, we urge you to either strongly consider some amendments to this bill or consider not passing it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Seeing no questions, have a great day. Oh, I'm sorry, Cinderella.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Stevens, for taking my question. The current law has a 3-year look back. Is it the look back and part of the problem for you?
I think it's the look back, and as Attorney Tower laid out, a landlord can ask about your criminal history. If you lie about it, that's just cause for eviction. They can ask for a criminal background check on their own. This bill requires somebody to affirmatively in writing say, 4 years ago, I was convicted of having a controlled substance in my possession, something that they might have done their time for and have been rehabilitated. They may not be thinking about that. They don't know that this is in the law. So it's not on their lease asking them to disclose it, so they don't. And then it's held against them. And it could have happened 4 years and 11 months ago. And I think the other provision that we're really concerned about is lines 1 through 4 on page 2, where it says it may name a defendant only, and the court may enter judgment against only the named defendant. If that was shall, it would be a much better bill.
May I follow up?
Yes, you may.
So in your testimony, you also talked about the mechanisms that are already in place for New Hampshire landlords to terminate tenancies, and that there are proper procedures in place and that the termination has to do with the tenancy itself, not something unrelated to being a tenant in the space. So this look back would be related to things that are not necessarily pertinent to being a tenant. For instance, I think we have an example somewhere of like having a graffiti charge that was prosecuted successfully 4 years prior.
If graffiti was a felony, I'm not a criminal defense attorney, so I don't know if graffiti is a felony, but we do know that, if a 19-year-old obtained somebody else's medication and they were arrested for that, if they were using it recreationally, that is a felony. As you've heard, stealing an iPad, if it's worth more than $1,000, that is a felony. And so if a teenager, 18, 19-year-old did that 4 years ago, if they're still living in the house, the entire family could lose their housing for the action of that one person many, many years ago.
Thank you. May I follow up?
Yes, you may.
Last follow-up. Thank you for indulging in my questions. So one of the bits in your testimony, I think, relates to the tendency of everyone in the house or the apartment or condo or whatever. And I think we have heard, particularly in this committee, about families that are really struggling to get mental health supports, particularly for their young adult children, for whom they don't have, they're not able to force like a 16-year-old to get help, but a 19-year-old, they're on their own. And this 19-year-old, according to your testimony, could possibly affect the housing for the entire family.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seth? Thank you. for your
Thank you.
testimony. Nick Taylor? You look like Tom Cruise on your distance.
I think I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Nick Taylor. I'm the Director of Housing Action, New Hampshire. We're a pro-homes advocacy organization, and that includes building more homes and keeping people in the homes that they have. We have some of the same concerns that have been raised, and we are in opposition to this because of those sort of general principles behind our existing eviction statutes and what this would change. First, that look-back provision that we've discussed. There is the opportunity for due diligence, for background checks, for asking about this during the application process, agreeing to your lease term. And in the last legislative session, the legislature talked in the debate on House Bill 60 about this idea that a landlord and tenant contract is a contract. You have the opportunity to agree to something up front, and if that is entered into at that point with all the knowledge you have at that point, then anything that would change in the future is what you should be judged upon. And so what we have that issue with is if you are doing that look back, then you are no longer judging the tenant based on actions that they are taking as a tenant. And so we do have deep concerns about that. We agree with Mr. Tower's testimony that if we could add the background check provision in there in addition to the in writing, we think that would meet the spirit of what was intended here and be an improvement on the bill. We share the concerns about the household bifurcation with the may instead of a shall. And then, Senator Abbas, to your question around what happens if something is active during the middle of a lease. We have a lot of members who are affordable housing providers, and they deal with tenants who have had challenges, and they do occasionally have to evict tenants who have, whether it's drug distribution or some other issue. It is very common for them to have that already in the lease, and that includes a lease violation, which would allow them to evict the tenant if there is any health or safety challenges or criminal justice challenges within their action as a current tenant. And if it's a serious charge and that is not in the lease and someone is convicted and behind bars, then they are not going to be paying their rent and they would be evicted anyway because they're no longer present in the unit. So that's another opportunity where this would come up in practice. but appreciate the question, the committee's consideration. And hopefully you can either ITL the bill or consider these amendments as it moves forward.
Senator Abbas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. It seems that a lot of the, I guess, what I'm hearing from the testimony is lines 12 to 14. That's the 5-year look back period for the max penalty being in excess of a year. If we were to take that section out, but leave A, C, and D in, would there be any opposition?
I think the issue similarly would be the disclosure piece at the front end, is if the landlord has the opportunity to know this and ask about this and it's disclosed at the front end, then that should be part of that consenting contract that they're agreeing to at the time of the lease agreement. And if they lie or are providing false documentation during that process, we do think that's already covered under the other good cause, but it certainly could be codified into state law to add clarity behind it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think if you look at a lease, is there any material misrepresentation, you would have to prove that that representation, when it was made to you, when they lied, was material to you. Whether you can do that or not in a courtroom might depend on each lease. So wouldn't this just kind of clean it up then, if it's codified? And I'm stuck with A, C, and D. We'll deal with B later.
I appreciate the question, Senator. I would defer to I'm not an attorney, unfortunately, so I would defer to an attorney about the actual proof process during the legal adjudication.
I'll if I rephrase, Mr. Chairman. So if it's material to you, it means the landlord would not have entered into this lease but for that material misrepresentation that was made to them, meaning it affected the meeting of the minds when the contract was made. You would have to demonstrate that, convince the judge that that was material to you. Whether you can do that or not is another story. I'm just saying this kind of cleans it up. Now, whether policy provisions aside, this makes it clean. Any of these occur or had occurred, there you go. So it kind of makes the hearing on the merits very straightforward. Now, I can see some of the objections to Section B. It can be a relatively, I would say minor offense, it's still a felony we're talking about, but it's not something that perhaps puts anyone in danger. But for the rest of these, it seems, particularly C and D, I think those ones speak for themselves.
I would say as a general matter, from talking with the members we represent and other folks who we're having conversations with, it's both important that there's a transparent process that's clear for the landlord and the tenant, and it's important for the other individuals who are in the units to feel safe and truly be safe in their home. And so I think to the extent that there are ways to clean things up that are providing that opportunity on the front end to agree to a contract with full information, I think that makes sense. And if there are things that materially do change the relationship in the interim, I think that's a fair piece to be looking at through those other good cause and health and safety pieces of the existing eviction statute. I'm not sure if that's answering the question, but
thank you.
I apologize.
Seeing no other questions? Thank you very much. Jessica Marguson. She's what? Okay. Elliot Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Just turn your mic on.
I'm still Elliot Berry, and and I am opposed to HB 499. I most want to address Senator Abbas's interesting questions. What happens? I mean, I think you've heard the basic idea that if the landlord knows that the tenant committed a crime in the past and still goes ahead and rent, then he shouldn't be able to evict you for that. And the amendment, there ought to be that if he finds out, not just from the tenant, but from an authorized criminal records check. That's pretty clear. So then you get to your question, Senator, about what happens when the crime happens after the beginning of the tenancy. And my responses to that, I think, are threefold. Number one, in all of the leases of larger landlords that I know of, the commission of criminal activity is a grounds for eviction, at least when the criminal activity is on or near the premises. So then the question is, well, what happens when the criminal activity is not on or near the premises? And that gets you to the question is, should that necessarily be grounds for eviction? You know, if a 19-year-old shoplifts something expensive way off the premises, why should that be grounds to evict somebody? If the family who, imagine, didn't authorize the shoplifting, and if it is serious, it's probably, under the current law, certainly if it affects any existing tenant, the landlord or the landlord's representative, it's crystal clear that you can evict that under the current statute. And so the question, I suppose, is what's left under the current law? What kind of criminal activity can't you evict for? And I would argue that, yes, if some member of the household goes out and murders somebody, or sexually assaults somebody, or commits any kind of felony, they're going to get de facto evicted because they're going to end up behind bars. Why does the landlord need to go and evict the remaining members of the household when somebody who's been convicted of a felony during the course of the tenancy is behind bars? I mean, we're not talking about misdemeanors here. You're talking about felonies. So the bottom line is, I think the current law is more than sufficient to cover this. But if you're going to do it, I urge you to make crystal clear that any way that the landlord that's knew at the time of the inception of the tenancy of the criminal activity, then the landlord shouldn't be able to go ahead and evict.
So at the inception of the tenancy, you fill out everything honestly about yourself. Should I include in my questionnaire, if I'm the rentor, that this includes all your family members? Do I have a right to know about minor family members' illegal activities?
About minors, as far as I know.
Would this cover everyone, or is it just when I get my application?
The criminal activity is only going to cover the person who executed the release.
And then when I find out one of the other members of who's living there has violated this, you can see where I didn't have the knowledge at the time. That another.
Yeah, if you didn't have the knowledge at the time, then you can go ahead, you would be able to go ahead and.
Okay, thank you. Senator Abbas, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. You covered this in your testimony. So I'm talking lines 21 to 23 of the bill. It says any conviction disclosed in writing by the tenant or occupant to the landlord prior to the start of the tenancy shall prevent the landlord from later terminating that tenancy.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense. They knew about it. It's clearly not material to any agreement.
Absolutely.
So that for them to turn around and try to evict under this wouldn't make any sense.
Right.
Is there any changes to that section that we?
Yeah, I think that's where you need. I'm sorry.
That may perhaps change your opinion on this bill.
Certainly, it would vastly improve the bill if you throw in the fact that including that the landlord found out through an authorized criminal records check. In other words, the idea is if the landlord knew about it, then all bets are off. He shouldn't be able to turn around. He can evict for any other reason during the course of the tenancy, but he can't evict for something that happened before the tenancy that he already knew about. That's the idea. And then the other key thing I think is that the eviction should only apply to the person who committed the crime. Because there are plenty of cases where in some, the other members of the family, often a domestic partner, doesn't know and is as much a victim of the crime as, a third party. And the last thing you want to do is punish her by making her lose her housing because of a criminal activity that she didn't know anything about or have any, or have anything to do with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Reardon, you guys all set? Okay, thank you very much for your testimony. Rachel Potter, did I get you? No, I didn't, okay. The first shall be last, the last shall be first.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Rachel Potter. I'm here in my capacity as policy associate at the ACLU to oppose this legislation. I'm going to try to edit my remarks to things that others haven't said, agree with most everything that has been said as far as the opposition goes. Our main concern with this bill is that it turns eviction into a tool for enforcing federal criminal and immigration law through the state civil court system. So it allows eviction, as you've heard, based on certain criminal convictions and immigration-related convictions, even if the tenant is paying rent, following the lease, and causing absolutely no problems on the property. So as you've heard, that means eviction is no longer about what happens on the property. It's about a person's past. And traditionally, eviction law in New Hampshire has not focused on that. And this bill changes fundamentally a significant, and fundamentally represents a significant expansion of government involvement in these private agreements. So as you've heard, it applies to any crime where the maximum possible penalty is more than 1 year in prison, which means it applies to any felony, not just violent crimes. So as you've heard, offenses like drug possession, writing a bad check, signing the wrong name on a document within the past 5 years, right? Cutting timber on the wrong property, getting into a bar fight, 4 years ago, lending your car to someone who didn't have a license. These things have nothing to do with how someone behaves as a tenant, yet they could still lose their housing even if they're paying rent and following the lease. And from a public safety perspective, research shows that stable housing reduces reoffending and helps people remain in recovery from drug use. And housing instability actually increases recidivism. So when people have stable housing, they're more likely to stay employed and less likely to return, to the criminal legal system. So if the goal is safer communities, policies that make it easier to evict may actually work against that goal. Another thing that we'd like to bring up is, in the same vein, that tenant screening and background check systems are not always accurate. Reports can contain outdated information, incomplete records, or even match the wrong person because they rely on name-based searches. So this bill could result in people being evicted, not because of anything they did as a tenant, but because of mistakes in a background screening system, and then have no way to rectify that. It's very difficult to rectify those systems. And then finally, the bill also includes eviction based on a conviction for improper entry. And many people with that conviction are not dangerous individuals. They are asylum seekers, people with children who are U.S. citizens, or individuals allowed to remain for humanitarian reasons while their cases are pending. And so we're very concerned about treating this immigration-related misdemeanor as a housing risk, as a risk to their housing in the state. And it will potentially also unintentionally encourage profiling in the rental market, discriminatory profiling. When the government creates these new legal risks for landlords, landlords are going to respond, by screening more aggressively, can lead people to being screened out based on perceived background rather than how they actually behave as tenants. So we're very concerned about that. This bill does not make housing cheaper. It does not build housing. It does not reduce property taxes. What it does do is increase evictions based on someone's past rather than their present and their behavior as a tenant. So for those reasons, we oppose it.
So just a quick question. So as a state, we've passed anti-sanctuary city legislation, we've passed 287 legislation, so our police actors, our state troopers and others can enforce immigration alongside. Why would I then not let individual actors have the same right?
We'd be opposed to landlords acting as federal immigration enforcement.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. thank you for taking my question. And in regards to lines 10 and 11 involving the immigration, if a person's been convicted for improper entry, in that scenario, if the person's been convicted, wouldn't at that point they be subject to automatic deportation?
Not necessarily. I mean, some people are here as asylum seekers for other humanitarian reasons after that conviction. Some people don't even know that they have that conviction. So, yeah, it's not necessarily the case always.
Thank you. And then, as a follow-up, Mr. Chairman, I can at least, I understand the logic of the objection to sections A and B. Whether I agree or not, it's a policy debate. But when it comes to C and D, what's the objection to those two sections? That's involving the registration requirement of a sexual offender or offender against children.
Sure. I think what others have said as far as, and your question, your hypothetical that you posed to a prior person testifying, as far as if that conviction were to happen during the tenancy, they already have the ability to evict that person if they are convicted during the tenancy. So someone can already choose to put that in the lease, as Senator Reardon had pointed out, that they don't want to rent to such a person and can already do that.
Yep, follow up.
I understand, I know the landlords here today are very sophisticated, but not every landlord's a professional landlord. Some are just, they rent out one unit or maybe two units. And in those cases, I've seen some leases, looks like someone in middle school, just what they have. I'm just saying in those scenarios, and they learn about this, many people wouldn't even think to ask. I'm saying when this comes out, or if they get convicted, they might not even know about the conviction, but now they're finding out. I would imagine from the neighbors or whatnot, they have now someone registered as an offender against children living. I mean, shouldn't they have a remedy to perhaps? That's a major change in circumstances. Why wouldn't they have a remedy in the law to address that?
I mean, I wasn't coming to specifically oppose that section of the bill, so I don't have a suggestion for how to remedy that. Like I said, I mean, most landlords are likely doing the criminal background check already, are likely, doing the best they can to make those decisions at the outset. So I don't see why it's necessary, especially when they are convicted during the tenancy. They already have the ability to evict them under current law, so. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Senator Reardon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. Section, capital A, section capital A, improper entry is a misdemeanor or a felony?
Misdemeanor.
I think we're all set. Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to testify under 1499? Seeing none, that'll end the hearing.
Done?
Yep.
Motion to adjourn?
Second. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're adjourning. Yeah. Okay, Senator Reardon can stay all night, but it's 3-1, we'll go on consent anyways. Thank you all.